When the pandemic hit, my entire country went into a lockdown. Unfortunately, we had to give a paid leave to the house help, and the burden of the chores came upon my mother and I. It was fine. For the first month, both of us enjoyed doing our jobs, and the whole house was clean. However, the lockdown was extended multiple times, and over time, we started getting fed up with our chores and started doing them a little less frequently. It was still clean enough for us to live there, but the house kept getting dirtier with each passing week. Frustrated by the mess that we lived in, my mother and I started fighting more frequently. Becoming inherently unhappy, we kept passing our chores to each other. Finally, last month, my grandmother offered to host my toddler brother and I for a week, and my mother used that opportunity to get rid of the clutter in our house and go back to block zero. It was on returning that I realized, amidst the gradual progression of uncleanliness in our house, we never really realized how dirty it had become, till we cleaned it up. Now, during the lockdown, locked inside the four walls of my house, I spent most of my time in the virtual world, the majority of which is admiring others' perfect lives on social media sites. However, I received the shock of my life in a place where no person should ever go, the YouTube comment section. After an elaborate argument with a gentleman from Kentucky, I was introduced to a social group that I thought was an urban myth. People who did not believe in climate change. Coming from an environment where climate change was taught to us from the age of 7, I found it difficult to believe that people could bluntly deny scientific facts. Then the teenage sleuth went on an undercover operation under the fake persona of Monsieur Ross Eric and played with the algorithm of various social media platforms to truly understand the other side of the coin. The way social media works is that a person sees more of the type of posts which they engage with. So I purposefully engaged with posts that disproved or discredited climate change. I noted down a few of their beliefs and I'm going to present them with a little paraphrasing, just to remove colorful and descriptive language that most sane people would find derogatory. Pay attention to the parts that are in green and the parts in yellow. Disclaimer, irrespective of how eccentric or exaggerated they may sound, none of this is made up by me. So here we go. Number 1. Climate change is a conspiracy theory that one political party created to control the parliament. There was a historic story that followed it, and the discourse just accelerated downhill from there. The problem with this theory is that human beings are not one-note characters in a badly written movie. Just because a controversial person endorses something does not mean that the thing is wrong. Adolf Hitler endorsed vegetarianism during the war. That does not insinuate that vegetarianism was a conspiracy theory made by Adolf Hitler. Debatable human beings can often support positive things. Number 2. The climate change that we see right now is a natural cyclic process, and human beings have little to no effect on it. The thing to notice with that statement is that the first part of it is actually true. Climate change is a cyclic process, but the changes are slow and subtle. If the natural climate cycle was a pleasant family drive up a hill, the current climate change scene is a whole roller coaster ride. According to NASA, atmospheric carbon dioxide levels were less than 280 parts per million before the industrial phase, 370 parts per million in 2000, and is 412 parts per million now. To give some context to these random numbers, carbon dioxide levels are higher now than any time in the past 800,000 years. Number 3. Global warming and carbon dioxide levels only have a high correlation to each other, and no cause-effect relationship has ever been established between the two. Sometimes you have to refute a fact with a fact. If you think that a link or a correlation between global warming and carbon dioxide levels is not as serious as a causation, let me remind you that the same analogy is applicable to another pair of phenomena. There is indeed a very high correlation between smoking tobacco and lung cancer, but there is no cause-effect relationship there either. So we can smoke our lungs away with no fear of cancer, just like we are smoking the atmosphere to ruin our planet's lungs. The problem is that we can have multiple pairs of lungs experimented on to establish that cause-effect relationship, but we only have a single planet. Number 4, scientists created climate change and it is their headache to solve it. Well, if you think hard enough about it, that does make sense. It's not like the world heating up and making the planet uninhabitable directly affects any of us. Honestly, let us assume this was real, despite the lack of any evidence at all. What could possibly be better than the global society uniting to save our planet? Number 5, people are so gullible. How can they fall for the climate change trap when even scientists don't agree on it? This argument is built on the fact that 3% of scientists do not agree with climate change. 3%. How do you ignore the 97% scientists who do agree that human causes are significant and only follow the opinions of those 3% of them who deny it? Look how thin the slice of the pie is. Number 6, and the most common one. Any effort made by the human race is futile because all it takes is one volcanic eruption to nullify our efforts. While there is no quantitative measure of how much human efforts have helped curb climate change, this bold statement confidently states it. For argument's sake, if we assume that our efforts were indeed nullified, the fact that we may have nullified a volcano which could cause changes in weather patterns for many years is a massive achievement in itself. And that volcano was nullified by the efforts of the few. Imagine what the many can achieve. Imagine what would have happened had we not taken those efforts at all. According to the TED speech template, yes, there is a template and no, it is not rigid. I'm supposed to give a call to action from this whole incident. But there is no human way that I can condense it to one takeaway. Here is one thing. Whenever people wish to spread misinformation, there is always one piece of news that is true and baits you to believe the rest of it. This was evident in the political parties supporting climate change being a cyclic process, there being no established cause-effect relationship, scientists working on climate change, scientists disagreeing with climate change, and volcanic eruptions influencing the climate. However, the misinformation that relied on this information is indeed difficult to get a hold of. Moreover, another pattern that I noticed is the fault in political opinion building. People need to decide their favorite politician to suit their opinions and ideologies instead of forming their opinions and their whole belief system based on their favorite political entity. Ignoring all my counter arguments for a second. What if the other side is correct? How big of a loss would we be at? As nihilistic as it may sound, there is a slim possibility that everything is meaningless. And what is the worst thing that could happen? To answer that question, I worked year-long with top-tier scientists to get a simulated image of a world where climate change is not real and we still take efforts. I'm just kidding. However, if climate change is indeed real and we don't do anything about it, COVID-19 may just be the beginning of the end. There is a real possibility that the novel coronavirus is one of the pathogens, ancient and unknown, that are frozen in permafrost in the glaciers at the poles. Once those melt, a disaster of unknown proportions may take place. Finally, I would like to urge everyone out there to be independent thinkers. Think for yourselves. Do not believe either side blindly. Observe what is happening about you and see what is happening in the world around you. Listen to what different scientists have observed. The improvement that we have made till today is just the fruit of the efforts of a few. Imagine what we as a society can possibly achieve with a united effort. Let us clean the earth and finally realize how polluted our living conditions had actually become. Consider this your formal invitation to bring small changes. A small change by many is better than big changes by a few. And this change starts with you. Thank you.